They were icons, legends, and trailblazers' voices that lit up stages, screens, and streets. But behind the fame and brilliance, many of them carried a silent battle that the world only learned about too late. From Freddie Mercury's haunting final performance to Pedro Zamora's fearless activism on national TV, their stories reshaped how we understand courage, love, and loss. Do you know the truth behind the faces who gave AIDS a voice and a legacy? Let's begin. Number 1, Denholm Elliott. You may not know his name, but you know his face. Denholm Elliott was the quintessential character actor, witty, warm, and unforgettable. From the bumbling Marcus Brody in Indiana Jones to the charming Mr. Emerson in A Room with a View. Elliott had a rare gift. He elevated every scene without overshadowing it. Born in London in 1922, he survived being a WW2 POW before stepping into a career that would span over 125 films and TV shows. He made eccentricity endearing and turned background roles into audience favorites. In 1987, Elliott was diagnosed with HIV, but he never let illness define him. He kept working quietly, gracefully, until his death in 1992 from AIDS-related tuberculosis at age 70. In tribute, BAFTA created the Denholm Elliott Award, honoring outstanding newcomers, because even in death, he's still opening doors for others. Number 2, Robert Reed. To millions. Robert Reed was the ideal father, calm, wise, and reassuring as Mike Brady on the Brady Bunch. But behind the perfect suburban smile was a man carrying a secret that Hollywood wouldn't let him share. Born John Robert Reitz Jr. in 1932, Reed trained as a serious actor, performing Shakespeare before stepping into the role that made him a household name. As Mike Brady, he became the symbol of family values in American pop culture, even as he struggled privately with his own identity. Reed was gay, a fact known to close friends and co-stars, but kept hidden from the public in an era when being out could end a career. He poured himself into his craft, mentoring the child actors off-screen and demanding excellence on it. His passion was sometimes mistaken for perfectionism, but it came from a place of deep commitment. In 1991, Reed was diagnosed with colon cancer. When he passed away in 1992 at age 59, it was quietly revealed he was also HIV positive. The cause listed was cancer, but his death exposed the silent battles many actors of his generation faced. Does knowing his truth change how you remember Mike Brady, or make it even more powerful? Number 3, Willie Smith. Willie Smith wasn't just designing clothes, he was rewriting the rules. Born in Philadelphia in 1948, Smith brought bold color, comfort, and culture to the fashion world. In 1976, he launched WillieWear, a revolutionary brand that blended high fashion with everyday street style. His motto: "I don't design clothes for the queen, but for the people who wave at her." Smith made fashion democratic. His designs were affordable, unpretentious, and effortlessly cool. At its peak, WillieWear pulled in over $25 million annually and collaborated across art, film, and dance. He even designed the wedding dress for Mary Jane Watson in Spider-Man. But behind the vibrant prints and success was a private battle. Smith never publicly acknowledged his illness, even as his health rapidly declined. In 1987, he passed away at just 39, with AIDS-related complications, quietly taking one of fashion's brightest minds. Number 4, Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury wasn't just the electrifying frontman of Queen, he was a phenomenon. Born Farrokh Bulsara in Zanzibar, he transformed himself into a global icon with his 4-octave range theatrical flair and a stage presence that could command stadiums. Songs like Bohemian Rhapsody and We Are the Champions weren't just hits, they were anthems of a generation. Behind the spotlight, Mercury led a deeply private life, Though never publicly out during his career, his closest friends knew the truth. His lifelong bond with Mary Austin remained strong even after their romantic relationship ended, and in his final years it was Jim Hutton, a quiet Irish hairdresser, who stayed faithfully by his side. In 1987, Freddie was diagnosed with HIV. He kept the diagnosis secret, continuing to pour his energy into music, even as his health declined. His final on-camera appearance in the music video, "These Are the Days of Our Lives," showed a visibly frail yet still fiercely spirited man. On November 23, 1991, he finally confirmed he had AIDS. Just 24 hours later, the world lost him to bronchial pneumonia brought on by the disease. But his voice never truly went silent. In 1992, the Mercury Phoenix Trust was established in his name, funding AIDS research and education around the world. Number 5. Wade Dominguez. Wade Dominguez had the kind of screen presence that made you stop and watch. With smoldering eyes and a raw, magnetic energy, he broke through Hollywood's noise in Dangerous Minds 1995, playing Emilio Ramirez, the tough, troubled student, whose vulnerability stole every scene. Audiences saw a star in the making. What they didn't see was the silent battle he was fighting off-camera. Born in Santa Clara County, California, Wade was of Mexican and French descent, and his striking look helped him stand out. Before acting, he performed as a go-go dancer in nightclubs' gritty, humble beginnings that honed his confidence and stage presence. After Dangerous Minds, he landed roles in City of Industry and The Taxman, showing range and promise. Hollywood was finally taking notice. But behind the spotlight, Wade was keeping a heartbreaking secret. Diagnosed with AIDS, he chose to keep it private, not wanting to be defined by illness or judged for his sexuality in an industry still riddled with stigma. On August 26, 1998, he died from respiratory failure at just 32. His career barely begun, his light extinguished far too early. One of the most touching moments came in his final days when friend and co-star Elizabeth Berkley visited him in the hospital. She showed him a rough cut of The Taxman. Watching his own performance, Wade wept and whispered, "I'm so good, I'm so good." He wasn't wrong. Number 6, Brad Davey. Brad Davis didn't just play intense, he lived it. With piercing eyes and a restless energy, he captivated audiences in Midnight Express, earning a Golden Globe and the kind of fame that Hollywood usually saves for its golden boys. But Brad was never built for the spotlight's false warmth. He burned too honestly, too brightly. Off-screen, his life was a mix of contradictions: a family man married to actress Susan Bluestein, a doting father, and a private soul who battled addiction and inner demons. In 1985, he was diagnosed with AIDS. He told almost no one. For 6 years, he carried that weight in silence, auditioning, acting, and surviving in a world that would have turned its back on him had it known. But Brad Davis wanted control over his life, over his death. And in 1991, at just 41, he made a decision few could imagine. With the help of his wife, he ended his life through assisted suicide, defiant to the last breath, unwilling to be defined by suffering or stigma. Number 7. Ondrej Nepela. Ondrej Nepela was elegance in motion, a skating prodigy from Czechoslovakia, whose every glide felt like poetry on ice. Born in 1951, he stepped onto the rink to treat childhood asthma, but instead skated straight into history. By 13, he was an Olympian. By 21, a legend winning gold at the 1972 Winter Olympics in Sapporo. Nepela dazzled the world with flawless technique and quiet grace, earning 3 world championships and 5 European titles. He wasn't flashy, he didn't need to be. His performance spoke louder than any headline. But off the ice, Nepela was a mystery. Reserved, intensely private, and living in a time and place where being openly gay could end more than a career, it could end a life. Rumors swirled in skating circles, but Nepela never confirmed anything. He simply skated, smiled, and stayed silent. After retiring in 1973, he became a sought-after coach in Germany. But in the late 1980s, his health suddenly declined. Diagnosed with lymph node cancer, many now believe it was AIDS-related, a truth cloaked in the stigma of the era. He died in 1989 at just 38. No farewell tour, no public tribute, just silence like the stillness after a perfect routine. How many quiet geniuses like Nepela left this world with brilliance unspoken and truths untold? Number 8. Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn was the ultimate political bulldog, ruthless, feared, and deeply connected. In the 1950s, he stood beside Senator Joseph McCarthy during the Red Scare, leading witch hunts against alleged communists. But what history often forgets is that Cohn was also a key figure in the Lavender Scare, pushing to purge gay men from government jobs, while hiding that he himself was one of them. Born into privilege in New York City in 1927, Cohn climbed fast. At just 23, he helped send Julius and Ethel Rosenberg to the electric chair. Later, he became legal muscle for power players like Donald Trump, Rupert Murdoch, and even mafia bosses. He was brilliant and terrifying. But beneath the tailored suits and bravado was a secret he fought to the grave. In 1984, Cohn was diagnosed with HIV. He publicly claimed it was liver cancer. Even as the disease ravaged his body, he denied everything: his sexuality, his illness, and the truth. He died in 1986 at age 59, never admitting who he really was. The irony: Roy Cohn helped persecute the very people he belonged to. His life was a masterclass in ambition and self-denial. Number 9. Ed Koch. Ed Koch was loud, brash, and unmistakably New York. As mayor from 1978 to 1989, he led the city through economic chaos, rising crime, and cultural transformation, always with his signature line: "How am I doing?" Born in the Bronx in 1924. Koch was a World War II vet turned congressman who became one of the most recognizable figures in American politics. He was smart, funny, and unapologetically blunt. But when the AIDS crisis exploded in the 1980s, ravaging New York's gay community, Koch's leadership drew fire. Activists accused him of responding too slowly, too quietly, while the death toll mounted. What made the criticism burn deeper was the whispered truth: Ed Koch was gay. He never came out, even as rumors swirled and friends urged honesty. To many, that silence felt like betrayal. To others, it was the survival instinct of a man raised in a time when being out could destroy everything. He later expressed regret, admitting he wished he'd done more. But by then, too many had died. Koch passed away in 2013 at age 88, never having spoken openly about his identity. His legacy remains tangled, a leader who revitalized New York, yet stayed silent in its darkest hour. Number 10. Rudolph Nureyev. Rudolph Nureyev didn't just dance, he detonated tradition. Born in 1938 on a train near Siberia, he rose from Soviet poverty to become the most electrifying male dancer the world had ever seen. Every leap defied gravity, every movement defied expectation. But it was his defection from the USSR in 1961, right in the middle of a tour in Paris, that turned him from performer into legend. He sprinted from the KGB into the arms of freedom and straight into ballet immortality. In the West, Nureyev's fame exploded. His partnership with Margot Fonteyn was mythic, she all poise and grace, he raw fire and charisma. Together, they redefined ballet for a new era. Nureyev didn't just steal scenes, he reinvented male roles, demanding power story and spotlight for men in a world long dominated by ballerinas. But the same boldness that fueled his art also fueled his personal life. Flamboyant, temperamental, and unapologetically himself, Nureyev embraced excess of beauty, of freedom, of love. By the 1980s, whispers of his health grew louder. He was HIV positive, but he kept dancing, choreographing, and directing the Paris Opera Ballet with unrelenting passion. Even as his body weakened, his presence never did. Rudolph Nureyev died in 1993 at age 54. AIDS took his life, but never his legacy. He made ballet thrilling, masculine, dangerous, and in doing so, he gave it back its soul. Number 11. Steve Rubell. In the late 1970s, if you weren't at Studio 54, you simply didn't exist. And at the center of it all, champagne in hand, velvet rope in grip, stood Steve Rubell, the man who turned nightlife into mythology. With a mischievous smile and a nose for who was in Rubell, curated chaos with precision, making his Manhattan Club the most exclusive, decadent playground on the planet. Born in Brooklyn in 1943, Rubell never set out to be a cultural icon. But when he and business partner Ian Schrager transformed an old CBS soundstage into Studio 54, they built more than a nightclub. They built a movement. One night might see Mick Jagger dancing with Andy Warhol, Grace Jones descending from the ceiling on a white horse, or a construction worker from Queens rubbing shoulders with Truman Capote. In Rubell's world, status was chemistry, not currency. But the glitter faded fast. In 1979, the IRS crashed the party. Rubell and Schrager were convicted of tax evasion and sent to prison. After their release, they pivoted brilliantly into boutique hotels, creating a new era of luxury hospitality. Still, the wild years had taken a toll. In the mid-1980s, Rubell was diagnosed with HIV. Ever the showman, he downplayed his illness, refusing to let the disease define him. But on July 25, 1989, AIDS-related complications claimed his life at just 45. Number 12, Liberace. Few entertainers lit up a stage quite like Liberace. With his glittering capes, rhinestone-studded pianos, and candelabras flickering in sync with his melodies, he wasn't just a pianist, he was a spectacle. Born in 1919 in Wisconsin to working-class immigrant parents, Liberace rose from prodigy to pop culture icon, blending classical skill with Las Vegas glamour. Millions adored him, and for decades he was one of the highest-paid performers on the planet. His trademark excess on stage and off, diamond rings the size of gumballs, fur-lined cars, a home that looked like Versailles got dropped into Palm Springs. But for all the flamboyance, Liberace lived by one rule: deny everything. Despite relentless rumors and a famously intimate relationship with his young chauffeur, Scott Thorson, Liberace swore under oath that he was not gay, even suing tabloids that suggested otherwise. Behind the velvet curtain, though, the truth was impossible to hide forever. As the AIDS epidemic surged in the 1980s, Liberace's health declined. He dropped weight, appeared gaunt, claimed it was a watermelon diet. When he died in 1987, his doctors initially listed heart failure, but the autopsy confirmed what many suspected: pneumonia brought on by AIDS. Number 13. Pedro Zamora. Long before social media influencers and viral campaigns, there was Pedro Zamora, a Cuban-American activist who turned a reality TV show into a life-saving classroom. At just 22, he wasn't just a cast member on The Real World San Francisco, he was the first openly gay man living with HIV to enter millions of American homes, bringing truth, vulnerability, and courage to primetime. Born in Havana in 1972, Pedro immigrated to the U.S. as a child growing up in Miami, where he came out to his family as a teenager. At 17, he was diagnosed with HIV. Most would have turned inward. Pedro went public. He spent his young life speaking in schools, communities, and on national stages, humanizing a disease too often defined by fear. When MTV cast him in the real world, they didn't just get a roommate, they got a revolution. Viewers watched Pedro fall in love with his partner, Sean Sasser. They witnessed their commitment ceremony on air, one of the first same-sex unions shown on American television. For many, it was the first time HIV had a name, a face, a heart. Tragically, Pedro's health declined rapidly during filming. Just hours after the final episode aired, he passed away on November 11, 1994. But his impact didn't die with him. President Bill Clinton praised him. Schools rewrote health education programs. A generation learned that HIV wasn't a death sentence, it was a human issue. Pedro didn't just share his life, he rewrote how America understood it. What would he say today, knowing the world finally started listening? Number 14. Howard Ashman. Before Disney princesses found their voices, Howard Ashman gave them words to sing and hearts that beat off the screen. A master lyricist and theater visionary, Ashman was the genius behind The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. His songs didn't just rhyme, they revealed character, conflict, and longing in ways no animation ever had before. He cut his teeth on Broadway writing Little Shop of Horrors with composer Alan Menken. Their chemistry was electric, and Disney took notice. When the studio hired them to rescue its struggling animation department in the late 80s, Ashman didn't just write songs. He redefined the modern musical fairy tale. But what audiences didn't know was that Ashman was racing the clock. Diagnosed with AIDS during production of Beauty and the Beast, he kept working, writing through pain, directing vocals from his hospital bed, and weaving personal truth into the music. The mob song about fear of the unknown was his subtle cry against stigma. He died on March 14, 1991, at just 48 months before Beauty and the Beast premiered. The film would become the first animated movie nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. In the end, credits, Disney added a quiet tribute to our friend Howard, who gave a mermaid her voice and a beast his soul. Number 15. Rock Hudson. In the golden age of Hollywood, Rock Hudson was everything a leading man was supposed to be. Tall, chiseled, charming, and undeniably masculine. From magnificent obsession to giant, he lit up the screen with ease, often cast as the romantic ideal women swooned over and men admired. But behind the studio-polished image was a reality that the world wasn't ready to face and that he was forced to hide. Born Roy Harold Scherer Jr. in 1925, Hudson carefully crafted a public persona that aligned with 1950s ideals. He married his agent's secretary in a studio-arranged marriage that lasted just 3 years, all part of the facade to protect a career built on hypermasculinity. In Hollywood circles, his sexuality was an open secret, but in public, he remained the perfect gentleman, handsome, wholesome, and safe. Then came July 1985. Gaunt, visibly ill, and unable to deny the truth any longer, Hudson's publicist confirmed what many had feared: he had AIDS. It was a seismic moment. The first major celebrity to publicly acknowledge the disease, Hudson shattered the myth that AIDS only happened to others. His diagnosis gave the epidemic a human face and shook America awake. Just months later, on October 2, 1985, Rock Hudson died at age 59. Number 16. Keith Haring. Keith Haring didn't need a canvas. He had subway stations, city walls, and the heartbeat of New York. His bold lines, dancing figures, and radiant babies weren't just art. They were acts of rebellion, joy, and defiance. In the 1980s, Haring didn't just paint the world, he challenged it. Born in Pennsylvania in 1958, Haring exploded onto the NYC street art scene with chalk in hand and urgency in his step. His work wasn't meant to be tucked away in galleries, it was meant for everyone. And as his fame grew, he used that spotlight to fight. For equality, for love, for life. When he was diagnosed with AIDS in 1987, he didn't retreat. He doubled down, creating some of his most powerful, searing work. He founded the Keith Haring Foundation to support AIDS awareness and children's programs, channeling his art into activism. His pieces, often playful on the surface, carried razor-sharp commentary on sexuality, fear, injustice, and survival. Keith Haring died in 1990 at just 31. Number 17. Stephen Stuck. Stephen Stucker didn't just steal scenes, he hijacked them. As Johnny the air traffic controller in Airplane, he delivered absurd one-liners with dazzling flair and manic energy that made audiences laugh until they cried. But behind the flamboyant punchlines was a man whose bravery extended far beyond the screen. Born in Iowa in 1947, Stucker found his place in the world through theater and sketch comedy. His flamboyant style and fearless delivery were decades ahead of their time. In an era when few dared to be openly gay in Hollywood, he didn't just come out, he came out loud. In 1984, Stucker became one of the first public figures to announce he was living with HIV. He didn't whisper it in interviews or hide behind euphemisms. He spoke about it clearly, purposefully, at a time when fear, misinformation, and stigma dominated the national conversation. His candor brought a face and, more importantly, a voice to a crisis too many still wanted to ignore. Sadly, his battle with AIDS was short. He died in 1986 at just 38 years old. Number 18. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins will forever be etched into cinema history as Norman Bates, the boyish, unnerving motel manager in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. But while that role defined his career, it also mirrored his life in ways too close for comfort. Like Bates, Perkins was a man divided publicly, charming, privately tormented. Born in 1932 to a stage actor, father who died when Anthony was 5, Perkins grew up searching for identity. Hollywood quickly embraced his sensitive, introspective screen presence, even giving him an Oscar nomination for Friendly Persuasion. But beneath the rising star was a closeted man in an industry where exposure could mean exile. He dated women publicly and even married photographer Barry Berenson, with whom he had 2 sons. Yet photos from earlier years hinted at a different truth, like the staged double dates with fellow actor Tab Hunter, where the real romance stayed out of frame. Perkins reportedly underwent therapy to cure his attraction to men, a reflection of his era's brutal misunderstanding of identity. In the late 1980s, he was diagnosed with HIV. He kept it secret until his death in 1992 from AIDS-related pneumonia. In a cruel twist, his wife Barry later died in the 9/11 attacks aboard Flight 11. Number 19. Joel Crothers. For decades, Joel Crothers lit up daytime television. With a jawline straight from a romance novel and a voice made for drama, he became a staple on the edge of night, dark shadows, and Somerset. Viewers saw him as the brooding heartthrob, the dependable lover, the charming villain. But off-screen, Crothers lived a double life, one of truth and silence. Born in 1941, Crothers started acting on Broadway at just 14. By the time he hit soap stardom, he was a familiar face in living rooms across America. Among friends and colleagues, he was openly gay and deeply loved. But to the public, he kept his private life guarded carefully, navigating a time when being out could mean career suicide. He even became engaged to his on-screen love interest, Vileka Gray, a move many believe was more about deflection than devotion. It was the painful paradox of the era, play passion on camera, hide your heart in real life. In 1985, Crothers died from AIDS-related lymphoma at the age of 44. Number 20. Paul Shenar. Paul Shenar had the kind of voice that made you listen and eyes that made you wonder what he wasn't saying. Trained on the stage, refined through classical theater, and commanding in every film he touched, Shenar brought gravitas to roles others would have made forgettable. In Scarface, he was the suave and sinister Alejandro Sosa, the kind of villain you couldn't look away from. Born in Milwaukee in 1936, Shenar was a founding member of the prestigious American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. He moved seamlessly between Shakespeare and screen, and while he never became a household name, he earned deep respect among his peers. In private, Shenar was known to be in a long-term relationship with fellow actor Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes. To a generation, though like many in his time, their love remained out of the spotlight. He died in 1989 from AIDS-related complications at the age of 53, age of 53, age of 53, age of 53.